when we said you have to show up with a plan, right? But you can't be attached to the plan, right? So we recognize that it's like, hey, we need to have a plan A, we need to have a plan B, we need to have a plan C, we might even have a plan D tucked in our back pocket. That's what 2021 is going to call for. This is a perfect example of that, right? So to be able to say, hey,
hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business, so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And in the spirit of our 2021 theme, which is being agile, we're going to talk about a pain point, something that I think has affected many of us this year. I know it's affected me, is the pivot from how we communicate and reach our audience. Dr. Stephen, I know that for me, I built my whole practice on getting out into the community and speaking on stages. I know that as an organization in the Remarkable Practice, how we reach our doctors and so many people as we are on stages, 8 a year all around the world, doctors flying in from all around the world to meet with us. And that was absolutely turned upside down in 2020. And so in 2020, we did what we said we needed to do, which was we pivoted, right? We pivoted. And as a result of that, we saw amazing things come out of that. We know that a lot of our doctors and many of you who are listening did that as well. And you were able to recover, right? You had to stabilize first and we had to get stable. Then we were able to reactivate and then we mobilized. And when mobilization happens, we had a strategy for that. Well, Dr. Stephen and I were just talking about a strategy and a solution for you. And Dr. Stephen, right before we jumped on camera, we were just actually talking about what we did before we started recording. It was like, well, we could just share that as our podcast episode because it was so good what we just went through. But we're not. We're actually going to go through it again, so it's going to be even better. So let's talk about the pain point. You know, historically, we've been able to get in front of a crowd, and that's how we've reached our audience. You've been able to get on stages, whether that's in front of a corporate business or you've been hosting your own events, you're going to places within your community, and that has changed. And no longer is that what's the story. So now we went from, being in front of a crowd to being in front of a camera, right? We went from being on the stage to being in a studio. And for many of us, it's been a point of exposure. And so, in the spirit of our being agile here in 2021, we want to equip you with some tools, some framework that Dr. Stephen, you and I had just discussed, and it's absolute gold. So Dr. Stephen, with this new way of reaching people, we have not actually lost, but we've gained. We've now become more scalable and more durable. We have an opportunity to reach more people, which is in the spirit of this pivoting and this contingency plan that's part of being agile. It's actually going to come out being a win and help us get ahead. So Dr. Stephen, let's dig in.
Yeah, Dr. Pete, I love where you went with this because it is right in line with this whole spirit of being an agile business, right? So when we said you have to show up with a plan, right? But you can't be attached to the plan, right? So we recognize that it's like, hey, we need to have a plan A, we need to have a plan B, we need to have a plan C, we might even have a plan D tucked in our back pocket. That's what 2021 is going to call for. This is a perfect example of that, right? So to be able to say, hey, our plan A has always been, let's get a group of people in a room. Let me get up in front of them, tell the story, and convert them into a day one new patient examination, right? So that's like so many docs, you're probably smiling right now and be like, oh yeah, I remember that back in the good old days, right? So, your community might be like our communities where they might not be ready to get a big group of people in a room, right? So whether it's talking about in your office or in a corporate setting, get them in a church or a gym or wherever, right? So we need a contingency plan because guess what? The value that we deliver hasn't changed. The demand for what we deliver has increased, right? The way we deliver the value has to change, right? Because of our current situation and circumstances. The blessing in this is, as you said, we're learning new skill sets, right? So we're putting new tools in our tool belt. And this one in particular that we're going to share with today is super powerful, right? And it'll be something that won't be a bridge solution until we can get back in front of groups of people again. This is going to be a new skill set that we will continue to leverage because it's incredibly powerful, right? So the idea of, instead of getting in front of a crowd, getting in front of a camera and delivering the message, getting off the stage and getting into the studio and recording that message, right? So it's infinitely scalable. You can reach so more people. It's totally durable in that you can evergreen and it'll live forever and you can just send ads to it, right? For example, But like all things, CEOs always look at every situation and say, there's always a trade-off. Okay. That's how mature business people, that's how mature leaders look at everything. There's always a trade-off. Like DeMartini says, that way we're not elation depression. We're not enamored with all the positive, or we're not blind to the negative, right? So we always approach every situation and say, all right, what's the trade-off? There's always a trade-off, right? So the trade-off of going from in front of the crowd to in front of the camera is, number one, there's a new skill set for you, most likely. And that's probably what stopped so many of you from actually doing this, right? So I'm going to tell you right now, get on the other side of that thing, right? Because it's the message that matters, right? Don't get all hung up on being perfect, right? So don't have perfection paralysis. You got to get the message out there, right? And people right now are desperate for what you know. Okay. So you got to get the message to your people, number one. So I'm going to give you permission to suck, right? Just get in there, get it done. Done is better than perfect. Move forward. Okay. So you miss all the shots you don't take, right? So I want to make sure that you know that production, don't let that trip you up, right? So you could have the most garage band offering, putting it out to the world. And people are incredibly tolerant of that right now. They don't like things to be overproduced. In fact, there's a level of distrust that comes with all the formality in the production, right? So let me give you permission right now. The world is flat. You can reach the people in your community. Okay. So take advantage of that. Number one. Number two, you might have a blind spot around this one, and that's the power and the purpose of this particular episode, right? So number two is stickiness, okay? So when you have somebody show up for your dinner talk or for your new patient orientation or for your better results faster workshop or your bulletproof your immune system workshop or your body signals advanced workshop, or you're doing it in a corporate setting, a church, a gym, whatever, when they're physically in front of you, people are stuck to their seats. Okay. There's a fine line between holding your audience captive and captivating your audience, right? So, but you've got them right there. They're not going to be rude and walk out of the room on you. Okay. In most situations, right? So you've got to be fully bombing for somebody to actually stand up and walk out of the room, right? So the trade-off when you take this thing online is that people have absolutely no problem hitting pause or hitting that X button and closing it out. They might have the best intentions, say, pause, this is good stuff. I'm going to come back and see it later. We're all guilty of doing that, right? So, and you know what that means? It never comes back up again, right? So or you know what? You lose their attention for a second, boom, you're off, right? So here's the rule of thumb. A good rule of thumb is when you're looking at, let's say it's a 30-minute presentation, you're going to lose 2/3 of the people inside of the first third of your presentation. Then you're going to lose another half of those people in the second third of the presentation. And this is if you're killing it. This is if you're crushing it, right? So the sticky factor that you lose where they're no longer stuck to their seat, right? The sticky factor is what's going to clobber you, right? So if you think about how we typically do things, Pete, in a live setting, is we will typically traditionally have a crescendo where we build, this energy builds towards a big emotional close, right? So let's say you're doing a 30-minute talk, you build for 26 minutes, and then you've got 4 minutes left to do a close. So you're building towards that close, and you do an emotional close because we know people buy on emotion. People move on emotion. It's the right thing to do, okay? You don't have that luxury when you're online, when you're delivering like a webinar message or a Facebook Live or whatever it is, So ultimately in this scenario, you've got to recognize you're going to lose, what did I say? 5/6 of your audience, even if you're crushing it by the time you get to the end, by the time you get to the last third, right? And the numbers are probably much more dismal than that for most of us. All right. So at the end of the day, if you wait until the very end to try to quote unquote call to action, in other words, close so you can actually help people, right? So get them to take an action that brings them closer to getting the care that they need to get the results that they want. You've got to recognize that, man, I've got to change my strategy here. And that's exactly what we're going to teach you here today, something called the 3x30.
Yeah, this framework is incredible, Doc. You made some really important points, and I want to emphasize and just shine the light there on two things. One is embracing the fact that this is the way that you need to be communicating and reaching your community. That's number one. And some of you maybe have fully embraced that, and some of you maybe have reluctantly done it, and some maybe have not done it. And now, like you said, Dr. Stephen, we've got to get to the other side, and done is better than perfect. So just start doing. The other thing you said, which was brilliant, which I think should take a lot of stress off of it, it doesn't have to be highly produced, right? The beautiful thing is you can put out content, you can put your message out there in a very garage band basic way, and it be received, and you not be perceived that you're not an expert. In other words, you might equate quality of production with my level of expertise. And that is actually not the case right now. Right now is you have some of the highest experts. I mean, I literally watched videos with, senators of this country and medical doctors at high positions on their iPhones telling us videos throughout the pandemic and going over things. I mean, we saw raw, but people with high levels of intelligence, big authority, and they're literally there on our phone communicating with you. So people are consuming content. They're actually looking for experts who are meeting them very much where they're at. So I think those two things, Dr. Stephen, are really important that you said that. And it's really important. So as you move from the crowd to the camera, and we're not going to get into the technical stuff, Dr. Stephen, obviously today, the types of cameras and all that stuff, or even the type of studio. We're giving you is this concept, this framework that the way that you're communicating is what's different, not the value of what you're communicating, not the need or demand of that. That's increased, actually. It's become magnified. And as a result of that, we simply need to adjust the way that we're doing that. And so, Dr. Stephen, This 3x30 framework is absolute gold. I hope you have your cameras turned on for this episode because you're going to need it. We've got some drawings for you to look at. And we're going old school, like whiteboard, with the marker.
Look at that
drawings.
right there.
So Dr. Stephen, I mean, I'm looking at this and it's looking like you're about to go surfing. It looks like some oceans out there. So
that's, that's not a coincidence, Dr. B, because what we're talking about here is an energetic thing. And that's what surf is, right? So you're looking at bands of energy, right? So across the timeline. So for those of you who are just in their cars right now swearing at us because we're pointing at a picture and you're on a podcast, right? You can watch this on YouTube as well on our YouTube channel. So if you want to double back and check it out, but it's a very simple graphic that I have drawn here, right? So first I want you to note at the top, the title of this, which is 3x30, right? So two things about it. The buy is BUY, right? So because what we're going to do is we're going to ask them to buy or take action 3 times, right? We're going to give them an opportunity and we're not going to wait till the end. We're going to give them 3 opportunities to buy, right? As we go. The 30 is arbitrary. Okay. It's just got a nice ring to it. And I also like the 30-minute window as far as being able to captivate your audience and not try to hold them captive for more than 30 minutes. Right. So we compress everything when we're online. Right. So there's a greater intensity to it because that it's a challenge to get people to sit through. And if they see a video that's more than 29 minutes long, the chances of getting them to watch it is going to be very, very low. In fact, the shorter your video, somewhere between 3 and 11 minutes, they're more likely to watch it. But we're not going to try to accomplish what we're going to accomplish here together, right? This is we did 3-minute videos to get butts and seats for this 3x30. So that's a story for a different day. In fact, just so you know, we'll do a different episode on the details around how to do this thing because there's granular details in here you need to know. But all I want to communicate to you today is just this perspective on a super high level of a technology to deliver your message, right? So this is how you're going to replace for now the missing components in your external marketing. So taking those relationships with businesses or churches or gyms or whatever, where you've done outside speaking before, you can get them to a place where you can do a dedicated webinar for them. So you leverage this to do that, right? So, or it's a workshop that you fill through your patient base or through your social media or through your email marketing, et cetera. Landing butts and seats is a whole different story here. Once we have butts and seats, do the 3x30. Okay. So here we go. What you'll see is there's a timeline. You see 0, 10, 20, 30. There's the timeline. So a 30-minute, let's call it a webinar. It might be a Facebook Live, what have you. And then there's 3 peaks, right? So there's a peak at 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes, right? That's why it looks like waves, right? And each one of these peaks is an energetic peak that leads to a crescendo at a call to action, okay? So remember, people move on emotion, right? So we want to build the emotion to the call to action. Now, what you'll notice down here is there's call to action number 1, call to action number 2, and then there's the call to action, the big close at the end, okay? Now, each one of these waves, if you will, there's 3 things you're going to be accomplishing in these waves, right? So you're making 3 points and telling 3 stories, right? The 3 stories to illustrate the point. Okay. So any 3 points could work here, right? Like Dr. Pete's mentioned the Phoenix plan a couple of times here. The 3 points would be the 3 parts of the Phoenix plan, right? Stabilization, reactivation, mobilization. Those would be the 3 points, for example, right? So what you want to be able to do if you're doing this for attracting new patients, like a B2C, but business to consumer webinar, you would tell 3 stories that would illustrate the type of patients that you want to attract into your practice, right? So let's say we're doing a body signals workshop, right? And in body signals workshop, maybe the topic of the month or the body signal of the month, the symptom of the month, the condition of the month is headaches, for example. So there may be 3 types of headaches you're going to talk about. We're going to talk about migraine headaches. We're going to talk about stress headaches, and we're going to talk about cervicogenic headaches. And maybe those are the 3 points, right? So there's going to be 3 stories, right, that you use to drive home your 3 points. Now, there's 3 things that you want to accomplish with each story, okay? The first piece is the empathetic connection. Making that empathetic connection is what's going to keep the audience engaged. It's going to keep them on, and it's going to make them say things like, wow, he's talking about me right now, right? So remember, we want 3 circles to overlap. That message means something to me, right? And it means something that's relevant to my life, and it's either something I want to move towards or move away from, and it's the right time right now. When those 3 circles overlap, man, that's when people take action, right? So we want to, number one, make that empathetic connection. So they're engaged and they're saying, he's talking to me right now. Man, that sounds like my kid. Man, that sounds like my husband. Man, that sounds like my coworker, right? So to speak, empathetic connection in the story, okay? Now, the story in this situation would be about somebody who is suffering with, let's say it was somebody suffering with migraine headaches. Tell the story, right? So then the second thing we're trying to accomplish is we want to knock down a barrier to them taking action, right? So listen, people tell themselves excuses all the time, right? So they've had the same story and limiting belief or excuse that they've been using over and over again for why they don't take action, right? So you want to knock down the story and knock down that objection, right? That barrier to them taking action in the body of the story. So for example, and I'm gonna butcher these stories, but I just want to do it in a brief way so it illustrates it to you. If we're talking about migraine headaches, you could tell a story, be like, hey, I've got this one family that I take care of where the husband was trying to get his wife to come in. She was just crippled with migraine headaches. The challenge was she was this really high-powered type A attorney who had, working 85 hours a week. She's got 4 kids. And of course, the story, she was too busy to come in to get her spine and nervous system checked. She was too busy to get her discovery process, right? So she was so busy, she could not come in to take care of an issue that had her staying home from work 4 days a month. Every time she went through her menstrual cycle, she had to be in the basement in the dark vomiting, right? But she was too busy to come in because of the demands of her work and her family. You guys follow it? Who knows this person, right? So immediately think about what you're doing. People are like, oh my gosh, you're talking about me. Oh my gosh, you're talking about my husband right now, right? And meanwhile, the barrier I'm knocking down is they don't have time. They're too busy, right? And then the last thing we want to do is we want to build value for this specific call to action. So let's say we're in a chiropractic office and we're talking about the discovery process, your day one. You want to build value for the discovery process. Here's $1 million idea, guys, because the problem we make as chiropractors is we try to build value for regular lifetime chiropractic care. So that's a misstep, okay? The best chiropractic workshops in the world, the most effective ones, don't teach you everything you never wanted to know about chiropractic, right? The best, most productive chiropractic workshops in the world teach your listener how chiropractic is the bridge to help them get what they want. Okay, so remember that. So the call to action here is actually not chiropractic care for the rest of your life. The call to action is going to be schedule your discovery process, or at the very least, to schedule your virtual consultation with me. Okay, click the link below and schedule your consultation with me. We'll talk more. If if this sounds like you or somebody that you know and love to learn more about exactly what we did to help this person, my schedule is down below. You can click the link below and schedule a private consultation with me virtually right here and now, right? So click the link below. You guys hear what I'm doing? I'm actually building value for the action I want them to take, which is the consultation. So in the story, I want to make sure that I talk about her experience in that consultation. Her experience in that consultation is she's like, oh my gosh, I've been to countless experts. I've been having these migraines since I was 16 years old. I can't tell you the number of experts and specialists and tests I've had, so how many pills I ended up taking, right? So now I'm on all these pills and my migraines are worse than ever, right? And I never got anywhere. How is it that nobody ever checked my spine and nervous system, right? So thank heavens we took her through these very specific and unique series of tests that none of these experts that she spent thousands of dollars to see had ever even checked her spine and nervous system. How many people agree that if you don't find the cause of a problem, you can never correct it? You guys see what I'm doing, right? So you're building value for exactly what you're going to be offering, the call to action, which is schedule your discovery process, or at least schedule your next step, which is the consultation with me. You guys get it? All right. So we're going to do that one time with one story. Guess what? We're going to have a decrescendo, and then we're going to build that energy back up again with our second story. Now, the second story is going to be, maybe it's a different type of, and I'm using the headache as an example here, guys, because it's an easy body signal to use here. Maybe now we're talking about sinus headaches or stress headaches, right? What have you. I'm going to tell the same type of story, but this time I'm going to tell a different type of patient because I want to build a different empathetic connection. Somebody was referring in their grandmother, right, who had been struggling with sinus headaches her whole life, popping all these pills. She wouldn't go outside in the spring. She used to love to play with her grandchildren. You guys know where I'm going with that, right? So it's like, tell the story of a patient who had sinus headaches, right? And then, of course, she didn't want to come into the office because she thought it was going to be too much money, right? So, man, then you start breaking down to like, she had seen all these experts, she had surgery on her sinuses. She was on all these drugs. We tally it up. She had spent tens of thousands of dollars over the last 20 years trying to deal with this. It's like, she had been to an expert that sent her to a next expert, it sent her to the next expert, trying to figure out exactly what she was allergic to and all these IgG and IgE tests and just racking up the bills, right? Racking up the prescriptions. And man, she couldn't believe that we were able to do our discovery process in-house, one expert, series of tests that they had never done on her before. And we found the root cause of her problem. So we knew exactly how to correct it. It cost $285, right? For the full exam. She had spent like $2,800 on drugs that month. How many people know what I'm talking about, right? So you're knocking down the money objection, right? And you're setting a value for the call to action, that discovery process. And of course, when you do the final actual trying to schedule a discovery process itself and having them schedule and pay, they've established the number 285 in their head, which is already a bargain relative to the $2,800 worth of treatments and drugs they took that month, right? And then you're going to give them the opportunity to get it at a reduced rate of 47, right? So you see what you're doing, you're value stacking here, right? So second story, we're going to be creating an empathetic connection with a different type of person so that we increase our reach into the community of people that are listening, okay? Then we're going to knock down a barrier to entry and build value. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to repeat the same thing, Pete, number 3, right? So now we're going to talk about a different issue. Maybe it's cervicogenic headaches in this example, this body signal, right? We tell a different story. And in that story, we knock down another barrier to entry, another objective. We build value for the call to action, and then we drop that call to action. And 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes in, we've seen all of these people clicking in and scheduling either their own discovery process in your office, or at the very least, their next step, which could be a virtual consultation right there on Zoom with you.
Oh man, this is so much gold. I drew, I wrote, I did all that during that time, which is great. So couple things I want to throw it out there. And this is really good because I think perspective is what I got from real fresh perspective. So I want to share my perspective with you and then with everybody. So you said something which is absolutely true. Because of the nature of how people are consuming content, and they will consume this content, they're going to be doing it from their couch or whatever. And you're going to have people that are going to come and they're going to go. Okay. So the first thing we're identifying, Dr. Stephen, is we're not going to fight reality. We are not. We're identifying 1/3, 2/3, another third. People are going to drop off. 50% are going to drop. Blah, blah. Here's the thing. Don't fight it. That's what first perspective shift is. Don't think you're going to be better than all the other people that do videos. Because you know what? I don't care how good your video is. Human beings pause and X out of stuff because all sorts of things happen. Okay.
The reality is, Pete, is there are probably half of our audience dropped off before I even got into the 3x30 and they missed it.
True. You're exactly right.
Just that's the reality of things. And that's how people consume content. And you need to be thinking about that as you begin to market your content.
So in the light of that, what I thought through as you were discussing was, okay, so if you look at each one of the 3 stories and the 3 points you make within the 3 stories and the individual call to action as its own, it could be its own standalone segment in many ways. And you actually have to build it this way. And you have to have the mindset thinking, because you talked about the decrescendo and then the crescendo, you have to actually almost mentally reset and imagine there's a new crop of people that are coming into the talk right now, and they're just going to start listening now. And there was a group of people that left. But what happened when the people left was, if you frame it this way, is you capture 100% of the people that were ready at the end of the first call to action. The goal is to capture 100% of the eligible people who are going to take action after the second story, and then capture 100% of the people that are available to take action after the third. And when you start thinking about it that way, it energetically transforms the way that you show up. So now all of a sudden I'm thinking about this like, oh, it's kind of like a solution to a negative thing. But I'm like, no, it's actually a solution with a positive twist if you have the right perspective. And so now I look at each one of these, let's call it 10-minute segment talks, like you said, and that's a variable, right? That's adjustable, but we're going with that. So if we had 10 minutes and I'm going to tell, let's say, the headache story, and I'm going to give that first story about the migraine and the woman and the 4 kids and the busy life time, regardless of what objection you're going to handle, which you did so well, at the end, you gave them an opportunity to take action. All the time-based people that were like, that's me, that's my spouse, that's my story, they're already like, click. Now they might click and they might be rerouted to a different page, or they may have tuned out because they're already like, he talked to me, that's our story, I have my headaches, I got migraines, that's the whole thing. What's the thing? And they're already disconnected, they're already distracted going to the next step. So you have to let them go, in other words. Don't try to bring them with you. Release them, because they left. And you have to release people so that you can be totally attentive to the ones who are still with you. And so from an energetic standpoint, I think it's really important, because we'll see, oh, this person views and it dropped off. Maybe they got what they needed and they left, and they're booking in an appointment with your office right now. Don't be offended by that person leaving. Celebrate. So I think that this is really important, so we can embrace that you're really doing 3 unique, in a sense, could be unique talks within the context of one, knowing that there is going to be attrition throughout the whole seminar, throughout the whole workshop, throughout your whole webinar, whatever you're going to call it. There will be. It's not an if. You cannot keep people in their seats this way these days anymore. Right. So this solution, I love it. It's so powerful, Doc. And so as you're listening to me unpacking this, because I'm just hearing it as you guys are hearing it, my perspective has already transformed. And now I'm like embracing it and saying, okay, so I can show up with a storyline that is from start to finish through the 3x30. But I have also a storyline that's through for 10 minutes. I have a whole line. And if you left at this point, I'm just as satisfied, because I've done my job here twice, 3 times. Beautiful. I love it.
Everybody knows where Dr. Pete's going to go this afternoon, right? You know, he's immediately going into the bunker and he's writing 3x30 webinars. And I hope you guys will as well, right? So I love that you've pointed out like the energetic piece of this. And guys, this would be part of a deeper conversation, because really, you know, we just, you know, if we were having a sandwich, we just gave you the meat in the sandwich, but you know that there's so much more around that: the bread, the lettuce, the tomatoes, the dressings, right? So that there's so much more to the sandwich. What Pete just pointed out, which is incredibly important, is the energetic component of it, because energy is everything. Your results will be a reflection of the energy. Energetically, when I'm delivering this, I think of it just like Pete said. Some people will drop in, some people will drop out at any point in time. Just like, imagine you're a singer or you're a band in a concert and you're getting to do 3 songs, and people could step in or step out at any point in time, right? So you have one song that builds on the next song, it builds on the next song. It's just like, but you could jump into that concert at any point in time. So just be okay with that and recognize that I have an awareness that people might be joining at any point in time, right? So that's going to bring in some tactical things like pre-capping, right? So when you're pre-framing, this is what we're going to be talking about, right? So stick around, because if you know somebody that's, I'm staying with the headaches because it's an easy illustration. Either we're going to be talking about stress headaches, we're going to be talking about sinus headaches, we're going to talk about cervicogenic headaches, where you probably have no idea. And this is the one that everybody misses. It's like 90% of the root cause of headaches, and no one ever gets them corrected because no one ever gets the diagnosis right. So that's going to be the last one we talk about. And then we're going to start off with migraine headaches. See what I did? I just seeded what we're going to do so people stick around. But guess what? That's not the first time they've heard that. I've seeded it in the copy all around this webinar, whether it's on the landing page that they registered for, the welcome, thank you video that I sent out beforehand, the emails, the social media posts that we did, the trailer videos, right? So the videos that we did that led up to them actually showing up, all of it pre-framed what the whole narrative is going to be. So that increases, every one of those tactics increases stickiness. You want to duct tape people into their chair, right? So it's all about keeping them engaged so they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to stay for the whole thing. As you get through these stories, you can say, hey, listen, if this is the first one you heard, make sure you listen to the rest of this video, because the last story we told about was about sinus issues. And the next one is what we're going to talk about, is the one that everybody misses, which is, so I'm reframing, pre-framing. And now you've got everybody. Everybody's like, I'm not going anywhere. I got to hear the whole story. All right, Dr. Pete, we're off to the races on this one. So obviously this is going to be the beginning of this conversation. We'll have to go deeper. Guys, I hope you see what we see, which is it's about agility, right? So 2021, how are we going to market? How are we going to reach our community? Are you kidding me? I hope you see it right now, that the potential here is limitless. Except now you have laser beam specificity. You can actually get your message exactly to the people who, number one, hey, he's talking to me. Number two, man, this is totally relevant because this is my issue and they seem to understand it. So maybe I need to go there because it sounds like this is a person that I need to go and see. And number three, I'm ready right now, right? And you can reach those people who are actively engaged and looking for help right now. The only question is are they looking for you?
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.